Hey everybody, Steve from the Otherz podcast here, hoping you all had a great holiday period. As a small bonus, I thought I'd put out an interview I did with Brent Paschke a couple of years ago. Brent is Pharrell's go-to guitarist, and we talk all things N.E.R.D, the Neptunes, and Pharrell during this brief interview. There's also a video version of this interview over on my site, superhelsinki.com, so feel free to check that out too. That post has also got some notes and links where you can find and follow Brent online. Hopefully you enjoy this chat that I had with Brent. Make sure you go follow at Otherz Podcast, Otherz with a Z, at Brent Paschke, at Steve R. Penny, and at King of Creams with a Z as always. And we'll have some great stuff for you in the new year.
Cue me, dog.
Hey everyone, this is Steve and Penny from superhelsinki.com. You are seeing my face or hearing my voice because I am here with I'd say very special guest, very special to myself at least. I've kind of been following this guy. I looked this up earlier and was kind of checking the dates and stuff for about 15 years or something now. So I'm kind of starting to feel quite old.
You are. Mine.
But we'll get into it. That is the voice of Brent Paschke. How are you, Brent? You all right?
I'm good, man. Thanks for calling in, Steven. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us, mate. I really, really appreciate it. Like I say, been a fan and a follower for many a year now. I actually kind of thought of doing this back in the summer, and it's kind of quite weird. I went back to the UK for a holiday in the summer. And I was up in my mum's, in her loft, in her attic. There's boxes of photos and crap like that. And I was going through these photos of all these gigs that I've been to. And there was all the N.E.R.D stuff there. And there was the stuff from like 13, 14 years ago, pulled it out. And there was one gig where I was stood like probably 5 feet away from you right at the front. There's all these random pictures of you, basically.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, yeah, man, I should try and get in touch with him.
If there's any good ones, send them to me, then I can see what I look like with hair, back in the day.
I'm the same as well, It's getting that way. But yeah, I'll have to try and dig those out at some point.
So thanks, Steven. Yeah, man.
But yeah, I don't know if everyone will kind of recognize your name. I think over the last few years, there's probably a fair few people that will recognize your face, at least from TV. Yeah. But I reckon pretty much everyone out there probably will recognize a lot of the work you've been involved in, a lot of the music you've been involved in. So can you give me like a little highlights package of some of the stuff that people might know you from?
Yeah, I guess. Well, Steve, most people like like you're saying, back in those gigs, that's kind of where it all started back in the N.E.R.D days for me. Or kind of a little bit before that, Pharrell, we got acquainted with, or started to know the Neptunes early on. Oh, this is interesting. Sorry, my computer then starts playing this Google Hangout over here. So
modern technology, like we said.
Yeah. So the Neptunes and my band Spy Mob shared the same lawyer, and that's kind of where everything started. We had a record deal with Epic Records, and Pharrell and Chad were both really big fans, which we didn't know of the group I had called Spy Mob, and that's where it all started. So that's where most people know me from, is this affiliation I have with the Neptunes and especially with Pharrell. It all started back in N.E.R.D days when the very first time we met Chad and Pharrell, and they said, "Hey, we got this album we're putting together, of our own stuff, and we're calling it N.E.R.D, and we would love your band to play all the instruments on it." And that kind of just set the whole tone for the last 15 years, really. It was kind of from In Search of kind of changed everything for me. So that's mostly what I do. I mostly do a lot of work with Pharrell as a guitar player. And, I do other sessions around with other producers and things like that, done some production work and some writing work. But majority of my stuff I do really is really in sync with Pharrell and what he's doing in the studio.
So over the last couple of years, if people have seen Pharrell on TV, as they probably have, seen him doing Happy and Freedom and all those kinds of things, you're that guy that they probably spot on the side, don't kind of quite know who he is, but you're the one that's kind of always there as well.
Yeah. So it's great because I spend a lot of time in the studio with Pharrell, and then I spend all the road time with Pharrell also. So yeah, it's great. I'm there. Most of the times in these last couple of years where you see all these shows going, I'm always on stage with him if he has the band.
Yeah. All right. Let's kind of go back to the beginning then, and how and why did you kind of like first get into music and playing the guitar specifically as well? What kind of drew you to that?
Well, for me, it's like probably like a lot of people where you find something early on in life that you love, and guitar was that thing. It was kind of like the first day I saw. I can remember the first time my brother's friend came over with a guitar, and I was just like, oh my gosh, it's the coolest thing in the world. And it just kind of from there, everything was guitar. I quit sports. It just nothing else really was, as important as that at that point. So that was early on, like 13, 14 years old. And I had good, really supportive parents who bought me a guitar and put me in guitar lessons. And, that was it. So, it's rock and roll in the early days. So, I wanted to play Ozzy Osbourne songs and hair metal bands at first, and that eventually switched to somebody giving me a Steely Dan album in high school. And then I'm like, oh, kind of switched over from there to like, some of the more 70s pop influence stuff.
Okay.
So,
and how did kind of Spy Mob come about when you eventually set that up?
So Spy Mob was these two guys that were in college together in Minnesota. I had moved to Minnesota after high school to go to school, and these two guys were, drummer is Eric and John were looking around to put together a band, and John was the main singer and keyboard and writer, and he was more on like the Steely Dan-esque kind of sound. And so the minute I heard that, I was like, oh dude, of course I need to like meet these guys, like this would be great. That's where Spy Mob happened. And then Spy Mob was a band we started in about 93, I think, got a first record deal in 1999, met Pharrell and Chad about 2000 or 2001 was when we did the recording of In Search Of. And from there on out, history with Pharrell.
Yeah, definitely. So, and kind of during that initial kind of In Search Of period, there's a couple of different versions of the album out there. There's the one that they did kind of originally, most of it was kind of programmed, and then they did the release of kind of more of a live version with live instruments. Were you involved in both of those versions?
No, just the live instruments version. So that I don't know exactly. I believe how that worked is that version that was just programmed version actually came out overseas first. So there's those that are floating around. And then, then they were like, oh, well, we want to put instruments on it. That's when Spy Mob came in and put the instruments on. I think that's the only version that got released in the United States was the instrument version.
Yeah, so, I've got both versions in my mum's loft somewhere, I think, still.
Yeah. So, so that's how that happened. They just said, we'd love to do live instruments on there. For me, it was a dream. It was just like, that's kind of early on into the days of blending those two kind of styles or rock style with those beats and things like that, so it's really fun, man. I remember hearing the album the first time that first version of it and thinking like, oh my gosh, this is like the most ridiculously cool stuff I've ever heard,
So when you first kind of heard that N.E.R.D album and stuff, and when Pharrell and those guys kind of first got in touch and wanted to kind of start working with you, were you aware of kind of some of the, the Neptunes hadn't been around that much longer before that, but were you aware of kind of them and their involvement in sort of the hip hop scene at the time?
Yeah, just a little bit. Actually, our first introduction to him was from our lawyer who said, called us and said, listen, it's kind of a fun, interesting, industry story, the middle finger to the record label story, because what happened is we were signed to Epic Records and we got dropped from Epic Records. So it was, you're young and your first, your dream of getting a record deal, and you're like, damn, I made it, the whole, I made it, I got a record deal. And then, fairly shortly after that, you get dropped and you're like, oh gosh, what am I going to go back to now? You know what I mean? And then we got this call from our lawyer, and our lawyer said, hey, I was just in a meeting with, Epic Records, who had dropped us, and your name came up with this dude Pharrell. and he said Pharrell said in that meeting, he said, well, Spy Mob's my favorite band. The record label had to say, well, we just dropped him. Pharrell responded with, okay, well, that's cool, I'll sign him. So that was kind of like, thank God.
That worked out fairly well.
It worked out fairly well. So Tim calls us and he says, do you know this production team, the Neptunes? Well, we're, a little more of a rock band, a little more of like a Steely Dan influenced band. So it's like, no, I haven't heard of the Neptunes. He said a couple of the tunes, a couple of the songs were like, oh yeah, those are all over the radio. Super cool tunes, And so that was kind of the introduction. That's how it all happened. That's how we met him. Yeah, really fun introduction. I think it's a cool industry story.
Definitely is. It's kind of when the stars align, I guess, and it's kind of all meant to work out almost.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
So when you guys when you're in the studio with Pharrell, are there any kind of differences when you're working on, say, an N.E.R.D album, and when he wants you to participate in like a Neptune's track, when he was working more with Chad back in sort of the earlier days, or is it kind of the same kind of process no matter what you're working on with them?
Yeah, it's really kind of the same process, in all honesty. It really is. Pharrell and Chad both, but obviously I've been working a lot more with Pharrell lately, and the genius of one of the many geniuses of Pharrell and his talent is that he is he's never really lost track of the I would say like the bliss and the creativity that's in your head. So he's very in tune with that. And what that does in the studio is it sets him up with like the full song kind of in one rip, kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. Like he kind of hears the whole song at once. So that process has always been the same, where he comes in and he so much of the time will have the parts already ready. He's so many times, I can't tell you how many times he's come in and said, I got a new song. And the first time I heard that, I was like, well, great. I'm looking forward to him plugging his phone into the big speakers and playing this new song. And he says, no, I have to record it first, which means he comes in with a new song in his head. So it always messes with me, because I'm like, I can't believe he can do that. He's got the song finished in his head. So he already knows before he comes in the studio. In fact, I'll get calls from his people. He'll know, like they'll say, yeah, Pharrell says, come on in the studio tonight and bring an acoustic guitar, because he's heard the song in his head already. He's already got it done. And that's kind of been the process. He just has the song and he says, Brent, I'm thinking this part. And go for it. So it's kind of always that creative process with him. It's really fun to watch. It's really fun to be a part of too.
Can imagine. Does he tend to kind of lay down the basics and then let you kind of fit in there, or does he kind of give you, I guess, kind of instructions of what's in his head and you kind of play, and then it kind of comes together like that organically?
Yeah, mostly he gives me instructions. So he will start to lay down a process, and if he's in that process, he feels I get that if he feels that he needs a guitar laid down quickly to maybe inspire that process along a little quicker or better for him, that will happen. But typically what will happen is he will have, he will start laying down that foundation that he hears in his head. You see him as he creates a track, he'll be like humming it out. He'll put the tempo in, he'll hum out the track. You can see him like kind of putting the parts together. Then he just goes and finds the sounds that are in his head. once that's complete, he'll come over and he'll say, "Hey, Brent, here's what I'm thinking on the guitar. We should go bump, 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 bump." And he'll hum it to me, and he'll say, "Clean sound, semi-distorted," or he'll say Chuck Berry, or Elvis, or rock. You know what I mean? Like he'll have like little definitions that he gives me. So he gives me those kind of guidelines, and I just go through and find it.
There's a good insight. I always I like to rewatch those. There's those the making of Justified videos that kind of float around the internet that were meant to be a DVD, then weren't, and they're all kind of out there, and you kind of see some of that process as you kind of explained it in those videos, where he just sits there and hums it. And there's a couple with Natasha Ramos, I think. He's kind of sat in the studio just humming stuff, and then drops a word in, and he has something looping, and he'll drop a word in, then he'll get a sentence out of it, and then he'll think of something else to add to it, and it kind of you just see it kind of build in front of you almost. That's the same process. It's really it's absolutely, it's just such a fun process to watch, especially you see these songs come about, and then you hear them on the radio, then you're playing them on stage for me, you know what I mean, or I'm playing against them. It's really fun, and his flow of creativity is it's a very beautiful process. It's very beautiful. And has that process and your involvement as well changed or evolved over the last kind of 15 years, or is it still very similar to how you started out?
It's very similar, and I think, and that's again, like I was saying, that's like, I think one of Pharrell's geniuses is not losing that. How do I find the words for this? Like not losing that bliss, that kind of that childhood bliss that you have as a kid. Like when any of us in everybody has an artist in them, right? Everybody has somewhat of an artist in them, and like that dreaming and that vision, and following through with that vision is really important. Just following through with your own vision, it reflects who you are, and it reflects true art, and that's something he hasn't lost. And you see some artists lose that because you get caught up in business, and you get caught up in trends, or you get caught up in whatever. And Pharrell doesn't get caught up in that. Pharrell gets caught up in creating and making a creation that he hears in his head, that he feels is the greatest it can be, no matter what. There's nothing that really influences that. So except for his heart, so that's part of the genius of it,
And as part of that kind of creative process, is it just what's in his head, that's what goes, or will he say, will he give you an idea, and are you in a position where you can kind of push back at times and say, well, I don't quite like the sound of that, what if we try something else and do different things maybe?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, like, it's funny because I do at times, I might try something different. I might, he'll give me something, and it's usually always the right thing. For one thing about the Pharrell tracks is that we know with Neptune tracks or Pharrell tracks, they're not really overly produced, for lack of a better term. Like a lot of popular music tracks you hear on the radio are really stacked up. They're very dense tracks, and they got a lot going on. They're very thick. Pharrell is on the opposite end of that, where it's his tracks are more minimal. Some producers are like that. Some, the Dr. Luke's are more stacked up, very, very thick, popular pop tracks. And Pharrell is much more on the other end of it. Both have geniuses in their ways, right? But with Pharrell, when he gives me something, it's funny. Like usually the part he gives me is always so perfect. It's really hard to fit anything else inside of the track without detouring from what the song should say, So there'll be things where I try, I'll try certain things or whatnot, but usually my first goal is to just get down exactly what he wants. And then I might add a few things and say, "Hey, P, do you like this, or do you like this?" I gotta say, like most of the time, honestly, it's hard to make anything else work. It's usually some really simple part that's just the perfect part that adds to the song. So.
Okay. And over the course of the last kind of 15 years, you've got let's say there's 3 different strands. So there's N.E.R.D stuff, there's Neptune stuff, and there's Pharrell stuff. And each of those kind of different strands has kind of evolved and gone in different directions and changed. And styles have changed and sounds have changed. How have you, as a musician who's involved in all of those different strands, kind of adapted and evolved yourself with them? Is it easy to do when, you know, production styles change and sounds change?
Yeah. Well, with Pharrell, it's he kind of does his thing, you know, so I don't have to really change. With Pharrell, I don't have to change so much of how I've worked through the years, you know. The only thing I ever try to improve with P is just to really kind of make sure that I'm as much help to his creative process as I possibly can be, you know. So I haven't had to like do a lot of technical changes, somewhat, you know, where I maybe will add things that help me get to the end result faster and putting a guitar track down. Like I'll do things like that, but otherwise, no. With other producers, as music has changed and whatnot, I do a lot of work in session with inside of the computer. Like other producers may, you know, if there's producers that stack up tracks more, you know, like are really dense in their productions. I'll work a lot inside the computer, and I've worked to hone those skills out so I could, you know, be a better session player for those type of sessions. But in the Pharrell stuff, no, it really hasn't really changed much for me, to be honest.
Okay. So I think most people that know, or at least kind of follow Pharrell, will know it's been, let's say, a busy few years. It's probably an understatement for him, for yourself, and, you know, the whole kind of team that's involved. During those kind of couple of years where, you know, we talked before we started recording about, you know, there was one day I saw you, I think you were performing like in Australia somewhere, and then like the next day you were on a TV show in the US, and you're going from not just city to city, but, you know, continent to continent, day after day, week after week and stuff. How do you, I guess there's a few things. How do you stay kind of, I guess, kind of healthy mentally, physically, you know, and energized and kind of motivated? Because as much as you know, I'm sure you love the music and being involved in all that, there must, I don't know, if I did something, you know, 200 times over in the course of a year or something, there might be a day where I'm like, yeah, this is slightly annoying, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not really feeling it today. How do you kind of stay constantly up when you're, you know, doing all of that work, basically?
Yeah. In all honesty, like you kind of, honestly, like it's really fun to play the show. Like no matter what, it's really fun. And we have such a great band and crew that it's once you get on stage, like it all kind of goes away. Then you always kind of know, like it's hard, right? If we travel overseas and then immediately do a show, like it might be like 3 a.m. for me and I've been up all night. But I know in my head, I just got to either make it through 90 minutes or whatever. And if it takes a Red Bull or whatever, I'll get through it. But on top of that, just getting on stage, honestly, with a band that is that great, you know, all those people in the group are just unbelievable. And the dancers are amazing, and Pharrell's amazing. Like I know, and I bet I can speak for everybody. It just kind of like that stuff kind of goes out the window. Now, yeah, getting on planes for 17 hours and 24-hour period and stuff like that. Yeah, it's rough, you know. But I think everybody knows you got that 90 minutes of time that we got to step up our game, and that's not a really big deal. Even if you haven't slept for 24 hours, you can make it, you know. That's kind of how I put my headspace, is just, yo, Brent, you just got to make it through this one. Let's grab a Red Bull or a coffee, and cool. You go to sleep afterwards, but let's give it our all. Just 90 minutes. That's it, you know. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and what do you do in that kind of that time in between? Are you one of these people that kind of can sit on a plane and work and do stuff, or do you just use that time to just think,
Yeah,
But fuck it, I've been up for a day. I'm gonna sleep and relax.
Yeah, I'm kind of a workaholic, so I'm always up working on something, or the plan is to try to get some rest or watch a movie, but I'm usually up working. Like we're not the most like go out crew, party crew or anything like that. But a lot of people kind of stay in their hotel rooms and people grab their instruments and practice or make beats or, you know what I mean? So people kind of stay working.
Is that kind of changed as you've got older as well? Like when you were 15 years ago when you were with Spy Mob and you were touring with N.E.R.D and stuff, and you were going to like London and other places. Was it a bit different then? Were you kind of did you enjoy it a bit more then?
Yeah, well, a little bit. You get to follow in behind Pharrell in the club and get the VIPs and the bottle service. And when you're in your 20s, you know what I mean, late 20s, or you know what I mean. That's a nice little perk around that time. Now you're kind of like, I'm cool. Like I'll go home and do some work instead. So yeah, definitely it's changed just a little bit, but I know.
I can imagine.
Comes with age.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're all getting older, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. So when you're both when you're on tour, I guess, and when you're in the studio, a couple of things. What's kind of what do you have to have with you? Do you have any like essential equipment, or I don't know, like a favorite, a drink you have to have, or your phone, or are there things you always have to kind of have with you, or that you like to have with you when you're doing certain things?
Yeah, I mean, anytime I know I'm gonna be around Pharrell, like even if I go to the studio for just a meeting for something else, I'll bring a guitar, and if it's just a light thing and I don't know I'm going to do, if I'm not certain I'm going to do sessions, I'll bring a guitar and one of my amp modelers, like a Kemper. It's a guitar amp modeler. So then I'm at least prepared. And sure enough, usually if I see Pharrell, I'll go, oh yeah, good. Come in the room. I need you to record on something quick, so thank God I brought a guitar kind of thing. So that's kind of what I do, like around, all the touring stuff. I would always have a guitar with me, an extra guitar with me at all times, and the Kemper, just for that call. Right after the studio, Pharrell says, "No, we're going," or right after stage, we're going to the studio, which definitely happens. No, Brent, you're not flying overseas. You're flying to New York with me. We're working with Madonna. Oh, okay.
I can imagine if Madonna gets mentioned, it's not really, you're like, oh, it's not too bad, I guess. But
yeah. Well, luckily it's mentioned before, and you're waking up at 3:30 in the morning and taking a 6-hour flight, and you know what I mean, like.
Yeah.
Do
you have like a go-to guitar or anything for when you're touring, or again in the studio, or?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of stay with, like, if it's a kind of a do-all guitar, it's always usually a Stratocaster. My 57 Tele, I have this really beautiful vintage 1957 Tele that has showed up on a ton of Pharrell songs. But for the road, I bring there's this like 76 Stratocaster that I bought and had modded up to my likings and stuff. So that's kind of the usual. It's just a Fender Strat.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So kind of over the course of the years, you don't just play the guitar. You've written, recorded, performed, produced, engineered, done everything there is to do in a studio, pretty much, as well as all the playing live, etc. Is there any part of that process that you enjoy the most or dislike the most? Are you?
Yeah, it's funny. I had this conversation with P, and I had kind of told him, like, I was like, I just really like, this is honest, like I like being in the studio, like my with Pharrell, like, you know what I mean? I really do. I like being in the studio as just a guitar player too. Is really fun too, because just taking the pressure off, like, I've done enough producing and engineering and everything like that you do to just, at times there's slow seasons in guitar work and you're doing other stuff, But yeah, I do really enjoy the guitar work with producers like Pharrell or like Tricky Stewart or like people like Ryan Leslie or Rodney Jerkins. Like, it's fun. It's really fun. And this stylistically, what, as a guitar player, where I kind of fit in with a lot of these guys, I just get it, and it's comfortable, and guitar is my strongest suit. So kind of tends to be my favorite thing, in all honesty. So.
You prefer sort of going back to basics and doing kind of what you know and enjoy the best, I guess.
Yeah. It's just, I can deliver so well on my guitar with producers like that. Like, and it's very fulfilling, you know what I mean? And I know what I can bring to a song helps, so it's just like, kind of like I did something, like that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
So just playing my strongest suit, I guess.
Okay. Away from when you're kind of doing all of this yourself and you're getting the odd kind of free day to relax, or the odd free hour or minute.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Who in the music world are you kind of listening to at the moment, or who do you see as kind of up and coming that you're looking forward to listening to and even potentially working with, I guess, at some point?
Yeah. Man, honestly, man, I listen to, it's so crazy. Like the last year and a half, like I feel like and I always have been, but I've been even more on my 70s kick, like my Steely Dan and popular radio kick. I kind of like stay there a lot. I like, some new guys that I've worked with that I can't wait to see come out. Like I did some stuff with this dude, Shy Carter, who's super amazing. And I don't know what's going on with his album or when it'll come out. Another guy that's up and coming right now, a guy named Trevor Wesley, I think is the most genius musician out there. He's got some stuff that's brewing up, and it looks like he'll be coming out with something. Those are a couple of guys, but I haven't honestly, like, you catch me when we say radio stuff. I guess like that the new Adele stuff. I was like sitting up listening to that for the first time the other day. Actually, it took me so long to check out the whole thing, and I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. I guess, but my 70s kick still stays pretty strong right now. So it's hard for me to comment on many new artists, honestly.
It's weird that you say that and kind of talking to you, because my kind of go-to stuff, if I sit in the office all day and I've got earphones in, just, typing away, writing the stuff that I write. In my kind of go-to album, if I'm like, I don't know what to listen to, is In Search Of. It's listening to you. And it's,
thanks.
And if I go to Apple Music and I put, the 5,000 or 10,000 tracks, whatever, on random, I can guarantee every day I will hear something from In Search Of, one of the versions that are on here, at least, 2-3 times.
Oh, wow.
And that's kind of always the go-to thing.
Yeah.
So kind of talking to yourself, it's like, I was listening to your music earlier, not just because I was going to be talking to you, but just because it's that go-to thing that's always there next to me. And I'm like, okay, out of all this music, I don't know what the hell to listen to. You put on, we've got like Beats Radio now, and try and listen to, the other tone that, Pharrell's doing as well. But if there's at times it's kind of overwhelming almost when there's so much music, and I'm like, I'll go to album In Search Of pretty much every time.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, In Search Of, dude. Like In Search Of, it's funny, when I moved to Los Angeles. I moved to Los Angeles after the whole N.E.R.D kind of thing slowed down. So it was around 2006, and Pharrell had kind of slowed down at that time. Remember, like dance and stuff was really kind of getting in, and that's not Pharrell's forte, the 4 on the floor thing. So I was here, and I was kind of just had a studio and was doing a little more production and stuff. And I got so many like young producers that I would meet that would be like, that album changed my life, like that. I heard that so many times, and it's interesting because it changed my life too. These people would be like, that album changed my life, and I'd be like, it changed my life. Like it completely changed my life. And even some days I do still, like, I'm a bit like you, where I go by, I know I was played on it and stuff, but I do still go back to it and go, it's a genius album, and it's genius from the writing side, like it's it's phenomenal. And I think what happened was just the stars aligned on that really well, where it just has this, it was a bunch of guys. So Pharrell and Chad were obviously well on their way up the ladder, you know what I mean? But as a bunch of guys really wanting to make a statement of being different, And
but it's one of those albums that to me was kind of so different at the time that even now, like 15 years is a long time, and music, especially of the last kind of 20 years, I guess, dates quite a lot. But that album, you listen to it and it still sounds kind of quite fresh. The production's still so good. It's still,
I agree, right?
You can pick most of those tracks now and release them as a single, and they would still work, I think, in most cases.
I think in most cases it would. I mean, it'd be interesting if, you erased that album, from our psyches, and put Rockstar out as a single again. You'd be like, yeah, they would probably do the same thing,
Yeah, so, you say Rockstar, I was watching some random TV the other day on iPlayer that we have. I'm in Finland, but I still watch kind of UK TV, so I watch like BBC occasionally. And there was a promo for some random show, and in the background, you still hear Rockstar. Yeah, it still kind of pops up here and there, those kind of tracks. And even now, when you guys do them at festivals and at gigs, people still go nuts for those tracks.
I know. I still see people out there singing those songs word for word. It's crazy. Coming to the the gigs with the Brain, trucker hats and stuff. I'm like, dang,
I lost my one.
Yeah, I know. I kept mine. I kept one I got from when I was on tour. I always keep it up in my closet there as the memories, the good old trucker hats.
Yeah, and I think before we started recording, I was saying, while we were recording, I can't remember now. When I went back to my mum's house in the summer and went up in the loft and was digging through all the stuff up there, and there's like big framed N.E.R.D CDs that I've got, and all the old CDs and boxes, and there was like an N.E.R.D basketball shirt, I think from like 2003 maybe or something.
Oh, one of those little blow up, the little basketball.
No, it's like an actual top. Like,
yeah.
Like a black one with the logos on, and I'd forgotten I even owned it, and it was it's well over 10 years old now. And it's just random stuff like that kind of crops up.
Yeah, it's really fun because our tour manager Philip, he would always design all these shirts, and I always look back. They're such fun, cool. He wasn't even a designer. He just did it for us. And it's like always came up with the coolest ideas and stuff for that.
And those things are still, it's still collectible now. If you go on, the forum, the Bape forums and BBC forums, obviously, with Pharrell's kind of links there and stuff, especially those kind of OG trucker hats and stuff. People are still desperate. I'd pay big money for them right now. If I could go and find one.
I think I heard a rumor that, I don't know if this is true, but I think Chad needed a hat one day at the studio, and there's a few gold albums that were first made, and they made the album with the hat inside the album. So the gold albums, like my gold albums right there, right? Which just has, just a plain old like gold record in it. But the first ones that they did, first few had a hat inside them. So it had a bubble and then the hat inside of them. And the rumor is that Chad needed a hat one day at the studio. So opened up the album and took the hat.
As you do.
I don't know if it's true. Next time I see Chad, I just remember, I keep on forgetting to ask him, but next time I see him, I got to ask him if that's true.
I guess when it's your record that you've made, and you can kind of get away with it, I guess.
Yeah. I just thought that was hilarious, man. So.
Yeah. Right. What other questions did I have? There were some questions. I think I've covered some of them from some of the guys from the Bape Talk group on Facebook and the Neptunes.org site and Facebook group. I think we're actually chatting to Mika at some point soon from Neptunes.org. But yeah, some of those guys kind of posed a few questions, and I think we covered most of them, but a couple were, what's your if you have one, funniest and most enjoyable moment when on tour with with Spy Mob, N.E.R.D, or Pharrell, if there's anything you can pick?
Gosh, I think, you know what, dude? I think some of the as I can think of, there's I guess most enjoyable moments. I mean, they're all pretty funny, but they're internally funny. Like our tour manager Philip, had one bad ear, so he was our tour manager, supposed to get us going in the morning, would always fall asleep on his one good ear, and we'd have to wake him up and break into his hotel. There's those kind of just goofy little internal things, but like there's so much exciting stuff with Pharrell, and like seeing Pharrell get on stage and like seeing his like body language and his excitement when we did the girl tour, and it was his first, it was the Pharrell tour. It was like his first tour, and just seeing that, like, you never forget like some of that stuff. This dude you've been working with, and you kind of feel like you've been a part of this thing, and you see it all of a sudden just come to this extreme highlight. It's just really emotionally, it's really so satisfying, and like doing like Glastonbury, where we ran Freedom twice at the end, and just everybody like freaking out, and you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, that's the stuff you remember. It's just being up on that stage and going like, oh my gosh, this is like history, and then people talk about it, and then people use it, like talk to, teachers who bring that video into class and talk about it as, a subject. And like, those are the memories for me. You know what I mean? That's what really gets me, I guess. And
going back kind of slightly, were you surprised at how much, Happy and Freedom and these kind of tracks kind of, especially Happy, I guess, kind of, blew up at that time? Were you surprised at really how big it went?
Yeah. I mean, yes and no, it's like a song like Happy is primed to be a massive song like that, because if you think about it, like record companies are definitely going to play it a little safe, right? So, when Happy was made, it's probably kind of still towards the tail end of Four on the Floor, 126 BPM, boom, 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 and it's not that at all. It's a song that, starts with it's in F, it starts with an F7 chord, which is, it's a kind of like a blues progression chord, you know what I mean? And it's got this really pretty chord it goes to in the chorus, so it kind of goes out of key for a second. It's so, that being said, you kind of go, gosh, that's going to be a tough one to push through, because the record companies just hear it as something so different. It's a risk, right? But when you take a song that's as special as that and push through and push past the risk, it's, if you make it, it always kind of does its big thing, right? So it's like someone like Adele coming out, and she just does her own thing. It's different. She sounds different, and well, look at her. You know what I mean? Like, look at how much albums she's selling. She's killing the game, and she did it her way, So you kind of go like, would we have thought Adele would push through? A lot of record execs would say no, because they want to shove everything down the same, formulaic thing that's working on the radio at the time. But when you shove past that, if you get lucky, you blow up. And it can blow up bigger. You have to have something that different to get to that scale, is the thing. So there's always that risk reward thing,
But it wasn't just luck though, it's hard work on your part, Pharrell's part, everyone's part, because, I've seen a few interviews with him where he said, Happy was like the 8th or 10th kind of version or iteration of a kind of a track that they were looking for, that he went to the label and people with. And each time they kind of turned it back and like, that's not quite right. And then it took like 8 or 10 attempts or whatever to kind of eventually get there.
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, I don't want to say it's all luck, you know what I mean? But it's just, and I think it's a lot of it. Pharrell's good at, he believes, if he really believes in something, he believes in it, and he'll push for it. You know what I mean? So I think so much of the success of that I don't know this personally, but I'd imagine, in his talks with the record companies and whatnot, so much of the success of that was, his pushing like, trust me, I believe in this one, and it worked obviously,
Yeah.
So.
But I guess it's testament to kind of his ethos and his hard work as well, where I'd imagine, before track number 10, let's say number 10, which was Happy, I'd imagine at least a couple of those were at least fairly decent, let's say, and they probably would have let it pass and go through, but somebody has said something, or he hasn't been quite happy with it, and he's gone back and redone stuff and changed it and rewritten things, and taken kind of all those attempts and all that time to actually get to that level and get that track exactly as he wants it.
Yeah. I mean, just a part of his, again, a part of his genius, right? To just continually search for what the meaning of that track is, which is, it relates to the Despicable Me, you know what I mean? And to the guy, what's his name? Can't remember the guy's, Gru, yeah, because relating to him, you know what I mean? It's just Pharrell's hard work and really fighting to make sure that feels right to that song, and he did it,
Well, yeah. I think everyone around the world has probably heard that track 100 times, and everyone still kind of loves it. I still hear that track most days, listen to music. I've got a 5-year-old son who still wants to sit there and watch the videos and sing along to it. And he's a massive like Pharrell fan as well, and he's 5. And we get to a point now where I can say, put a track on the TV, and do you know who made this? And he'll sit there and listen and be like, that's a Pharrell one. It's like, yeah, well done, yeah.
It's funny, right? Like, it's one thing. Pharrell really, he's got that sound, he's really got that sound. He doesn't quantize a lot of instruments. So just like you hear when you would hear old bands and you couldn't quantize, like they play the way they play, like things don't get fixed. Like you kind of go, oh, that just sounds like that drummer's feel, or that sounds like that drummer's feel. That's kind of the way it is with Pharrell, is like, he just has a certain feel, and it feels good, like he's got it in his blood. So he doesn't use the computer to fix everything that is, not machine-like, which a lot of people do. It just one track sounds like the next track. You can't tell what producer did it. That's the reason that Pharrell, you can tell, is he leaves his feel on there no matter what.
Yeah, I guess even as the sounds have changed over the years, you can still hear a Neptune's track from like 01, 02, and it's got that distinctive sound, and you go, that's a Neptune's track. And then up to now, you hear anything that he's working on at the moment, and you can generally, things have diversified a bit and they're a bit different, but you can kind of go, I think that's a Pharrell track,
Yeah. That's all in the feel, really. Whatever sound he's using, like a Rhodes or piano, a crazy synth, whatever he's using, it's really that I equate that to his feel, just the way he plays,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. I think. Oh no, we had a Spy Mob question as well. Actually, I did actually see the guys. They posted something on Facebook a little while back. It was probably might have been like December kind of time, and they were getting together for a gig or a show or something, and posted that you weren't there, that you were away with a certain somebody who was quite popular at the time. Do you think will there be any work with Spy Mob in the future? Will you guys kind of do some bits together, perhaps? Or
I don't think so. I mean, we've all kind of moved on to families and stuff. I talk to the guys still pretty regularly and stuff. I don't think we'll do another album or anything. I think if there's any reunion things, if any of it happens with N.E.R.D, who knows? You never know what could happen with that. I'm sure everybody, I know for a fact everyone would be like, hell yeah, let's go do some shows, So I mean, hopefully something like that will happen. You never know what's in the books, But I don't think, as far as Spy Mob stuff, I don't think there'll be any reunion things or anything like that.
Disappointed a lot of people, I think, saying that.
Oh man, I mean, I don't think so. Who knows? I would never count it out, but I wouldn't be opposed to it, but
One of those online petitions that everyone does nowadays might get it going.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, there's a few of those tracks that are unfinished that I wouldn't mind see the light of day too. You know. So John the singer, and he was such an incredible writer. So there's a little stack of tracks there, that beautiful songs, you know, that I'd love to see finished.
Mm-hmm. So. Okay. So obviously Spy Mob's not happening. So what? Now you've got, I guess, kind of a little bit of downtime where you're not jetting around the world constantly. What's kind of going on in life at the moment? Is there anything you're working on at the moment you can kind of talk about or tell us about? Or,
you know, just a lot of Pharrell stuff. You know, we still I still get in the studio with him as he's working with other artists and things. You know, Pharrell, that hasn't changed for him. You know, he's still working with all the great artists out there and new artists that he loves and stuff like that. So still doing a lot of that. And for me, on just doing a lot of education kind of stuff with music education. And we'll have to, like I was saying before the interview, I'll have to get back with you when we get our soft launch going and kind of give you a full overview of all of it. But that's really some exciting stuff. And it's really exciting to be working on some that are what I think is going to be really revolutionary music education. So really accessible for young kids. So that's kind of it. That's kind of my life right now.
You're 20 years too late. I wish that's what I had, you know, as a kid.
Yeah. That's
yeah.
Right.
When I kind of learned music as a kid at school, I hated it. It was boring. And I'm not like musically talented in any way whatsoever. Can't play an instrument, can't hold a note, can't do anything.
Yeah.
I wish we kind of had a lot of this kind of stuff back then. Now I'm really sounding old, but
I do too. I mean, that's where the idea came out of, and you know, I'm in the industry and I can get access to a lot of education from producers and things like that and artists. Like, I just thought it's time to make that change. So hopefully this all goes off good. I'll definitely get you 411 on it once we get it out, and it's really exciting. Can't wait.
For sure, definitely. Yeah. Looking forward to hearing more about it. Definitely.
Yeah, man.
So no more kind of touring coming up, or do you have kind of intermittent shows every now and again, or?
Yeah, you know, we don't have anything on the books right now, so I don't know exactly what's happening with that. You know, we have a shared calendar that pops up and says we're going to have some shows such and such dates. So there's nothing on the books right now, but you know, Pharrell's super busy with all kinds of different stuff. So, you know, we'll see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if we get out and do some festivals this year again. You know, not really quite sure though. Haven't really heard anything. It's kind of driving me as crazy as I'm sure it's driving everybody else, because I'm like, what are we doing? Are we gonna jump on the road? What's going on? Yeah. You know, but yeah. No idea just yet, man. I wish I had the news. Trust me.
Well, hopefully we'll see you back here in Finland at some point in the near future. I missed you last year. In fact, you did Ruis Rocks, I think.
Oh, okay, yes.
Summer.
That's right.
And and I didn't get to go. I haven't seen Pharrell, well, any of the recent stuff. In fact, it's like my fun fact that I tell people is I think I've seen like Pharrell live like 13 times.
Dang,
and probably yourself maybe like, I don't know, 4 or 5 times back in the early days, like when you're in London and stuff quite a bit.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, I haven't been for like quite a long time. I haven't seen any of the new album live, apart from obviously watching it on TV and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm hoping you guys kind of come back over this way at some point soon, so I can see some of those tracks live.
I hope we do too, man. Playing overseas is really a blast, dude. Playing the festivals is a blast, and it's been fun. This last N.E.R.D thing we did with the Girl Tour, it's fun because it's just like a greatest hits almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like a normal greatest hits show. It's like just a greatest hits of all Pharrell and Neptune songs, man. So it's a blast, man, honestly. And overseas especially, everybody just knows like every lyric, so it's fun, man. It's really a fun show to play.
Well, yeah, like I say, hopefully we'll see you soon, and if you are back over this way, then I at least owe you a beer or two or something.
No, I'll take you up on that one, man. Definitely.
All right, cool. Well, I think that's pretty much everything I had, to be honest. Unless there's anything else you wanna plug, promote, or
Let's do the plug promote. I'm going to do the plug promote with you. We're gonna follow up with this in probably in April. So let's definitely do a follow up for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll have a good plug promote for you at that point. It's really some really fun stuff with the education. So.
Nice. That sounds really good. And by then, hopefully, we'll both have worked out how to use Google Hangouts properly.
Yeah.
Get this shit together for once. You know?
Took us 10 minutes to get it, but yeah, we got it. So.
We got there in the end. It wasn't too bad. Wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
Okay, man. Well, I think that's pretty much everything. So,
cool.
Again, really appreciate you, dialing in, spending some time chatting and stuff. Like I say, I'm a big fan, so I love hearing all this stuff. And there's a lot of people out there that love all these kind of discussions, anecdotes, and hearing kind of what goes on behind the scenes with with the musicians and producers and stuff like that. So really, really appreciate it. It's been really good talking to you. So thanks very much.
Cool. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Pleasure is all mine.
Cool, man.